Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Messy Truths podcast. This is Mar, one of your three lovely co-hosts here on the show. Over to you, middle
Middle
child.
child. Yes. We are lovely, aren't we? Lovely and spicy.
We are indeed.
I had these hot chili flame Cheetos shit. It burnt my mouth, but it was good. I went back for another try. So yes. This is Nisha from Kanakahage, live and heading down south to our southern daughter, our
That's
southern
right.
sister.
From New York City, this is Azar, and not only are we spicy ladies, but we're also very messy. So hopefully this show is going to be pretty messy. I know I have some messy questions for our special guest. So Nisha, why don't you go ahead and introduce our special guest today?
So now we're going to a whole new country. We're going back to Europe, where I was recording with COVID, which was fantastic. And I want to introduce our somatic sex relationship coach, Chiara, using the pronouns she and her. So, Chiara, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, hi everybody. This is Chiara, and I'm a sex intimacy coach, and I'm here from Italy. And yes, what else I can add? I don't know if I can say more, or we just go to the questions.
That's good enough. We'll get it all out throughout the show, so it's all good. But you said you're based in Italy. So how did you end up? Are you from Italy originally, or?
I'm from Italy, but I work in the Netherlands. I'm based in the Netherlands, so I'm just visiting my family actually.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I'm flying back to Amsterdam.
Okay, wonderful. So we are talking all things somatic sex today. So why don't we kick things off by you telling us a little bit about what somatic sex is? You got into the role as an educator in this field. Tell us more about it, like as if we know nothing.
We know nothing.
Well. Yeah, I will say that. I think first of all, let's start with I think what somatics actually is. So somatics comes from the word soma, that in Greek means of the body. So is there anything that is related to how to understand how our body works? So, and when it comes to somatic sexuality, is any practices that, let's say, aims at healing the gap between the body mind gap. And so when it comes to somatic sexuality, you have practices like breath work or movement or touch or any embodied practices like embodied consent and boundaries and pleasures, because the body is seen as a source of wisdom and pleasure and freedom. And so a somatic coach aims at supporting clients to connect the erotic body sensations and emotion with the erotic mind. And of course, the talkative part is also like used, because we need to guide the clients to actually get to know their own bodies, to know their body's cues, and also understanding kind of how to use the mind to actually process all the information that the body kind of brings up. And for my own journey, I have to say that I'm Italian, so my background is a very I came from this small community in Italy where sex is still a taboo.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I grew up with very shame-induced messages, not coming mostly from my family, but just from my community.
The
Even
community in general.
yeah, exactly. But coming from TV, but also how people were gossiping about other people or other people's body, or even about the women's behavior around, while dating certain people or doing certain things or labeling people like a slut just because they were just very much in connection with their own body,
Mm-hmm.
or very much in connection actually with their own sensuality. And uh, I've been victim of any. Well, I mean, I've experienced sexual trauma in my own in my life. So for me, I had this very weird relationship with anything around sex and sexuality. I was kind of attracted to it, but very scared.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was always attracted to these, friends that they were having this that they were experiencing sex and sexuality with this freedom, or I don't know. For me, they were just kind of pleasure warrior. And me, I was feeling, I was so afraid to just saying what I wanted. And of course, the trauma was a big experience of that. And this, shame is actually the first enemy to experience pleasure, even self pleasure. And so it came a moment where, everything was just too much. And I went on on somatic therapy myself, and I studied everything about somatic sexuality and somatic practices. And so, because I wanted to heal myself, I wanted to experience something different, and that by healing my own wounds, I understood, that I wanted to kind of bring the same messages to other people, mostly vulva owners, I say, but everybody who has difficulties to actually embrace their own sensual sexual body, and also befriend sex and sexuality as actually a venue for, um, yeah, self-expression and serenity. I see sex as this magic, mystic place, actually, because sex for me is linked to sensuality, and sensuality is linked to pleasure, and pleasure is linked to feeling. And when you know how you feel, then you can name it what you feel, and you can go for it and say what you need,
Mm-hmm.
because you're feeling a certain way. You can say no because you feel angry. You can say yes because you feel excited. But it's also linked to desire, and when you know what you desire, you know your own wanting. So when you know what you want, you go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's a place of freedom. And so this is how I started.
And so when you're counseling people in this area, you talked a little bit about how there's a lot of psychological barriers that can come between a person actually being able to enjoy sex. There could be issues with trauma. There could be issues with, like you mentioned, being in a conservative society where talking openly or expressing yourself openly about sex is not really encouraged. So, can you talk a little bit about how much the psychological element of sex is connected to the physical element, because that seems to be the key link between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, the things is that it has been like proven how, shame. So the shame is one of the first factors that can impede, to explore, to befriend sex and to explore your own body, to explore, sexuality. But, maybe you have read, but a lot of people says that actually our brain is the biggest sex organs.
Mhm.
So if you have a certain ideas around sex, if you have been having or growing up about with some messages around how you need to dress and what sex should be like, and there is only one way to exploring orgasm, and if you don't get that way, then there is something wrong with you, and you need to do this. There are so many messages or ideas around sex and sexuality. And these ideas are causing so much stress on how people are actually experiencing their pleasure, they're experiencing their own body, they're experiencing sex with their partners and just with themselves because they think they
Yeah.
need,
It's like,
yeah,
sorry, I was going to say it's like you have to reprogram yourself and thinking a little more
yeah.
fluidly and, about that
Like
subject, right?
most of the people that come to me, they say, am I wrong? Am I, there is something, is there something wrong with me? Because I don't orgasm with, for example, in a male female partnership, I don't orgasm with penetration, and everybody says that this is the best orgasm. Or am I broken if, for example, I have this kind of fantasies? Am I a pervert? There are so many ideas. Or for example, I don't desire that much my partner, like my partner is always the one who starts and I'm always the one that responds. Does this mean something? There is something wrong with me. And this is because first there is so much stressed around the idea of that you need to have sex all the time, and sex is this way instead of this way, like if there is one size that fits all. But this is the first things that needs to be debunked. There is not one size fits all in sex. As you know, it's very difficult that there is one size fits all in this life. And because we are all different and we are all unique. And so, of course, the psychological part influence this. And actually, there is this very magnificent book that is called "Come as You Are," and in this book is described this dual control, where basically our arousal is measured according to how we it's called accelerators and brakes. So if you are turned on, basically you're hitting on your accelerator, so whatever is helping you to feel aroused. So, and this can be a particular touch, or maybe because you're feeling fantastic in your body, or it's because you're smelling a flavor that is very good. And if you're turned off, it's because you're, putting on your brakes. And brakes is anything that can be, you're super stressed, or you're in a day that you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, today I feel horrible. And the idea of being touched by someone is out of your mind, or because your hormones are just not balanced. So there are all these kind of situations, and when you realize that this is actually your erotic mind kind of works and is affecting your erotic body, you kind of start thinking, okay, then there is nothing wrong with me. It's just kind of biochemical things happening in my body, and it's the stress, if it kind of makes sense.
Right, for sure. There's a lot of pressure, I think, societal wise around sex and, like you said, how frequently we have sex and how we have sex and whether we orgasm the second that we have sex. And there were some interesting questions that you brought up, and I was curious to know. You said that it your work revolves mostly around people who have a vulva, right? But I was wondering if
Mm-hmm.
you also deal with people who identify as men or who have penises, and do they struggle the same way with this subject?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. I wanted to say, I mean, I think into my practice, I welcome every human beings. I have to say that because of my own experiences, kind of I attract a lot of vulva owners. I want to say, but I'm also open to a penis owner. And yes, I do have men in my practice. And with men is a different things because of course they've been victim. I say the word victim of the same sort of social messages that vulva owners have had, but it's just different.
Societal pressures and so
Yeah,
forth.
they need
Yeah.
to know it all, and men they just want sex. They're always turned on, and this kind of messages, and then they know how to do it because men, of course, they only love sex. And actually, what is fantastic, when it's very interesting because when I started this, and I was saying to even friends, I say, look, I'm a somatic sex coach. Like all my female friends, they were saying, oh my God, this is, or even people, oh my God, this is so cool. This is fantastic. Like I have so many questions. When I was saying this to my male friends or even people like, men, there were two reactions, either silence or the other reaction was, oh, I don't need this. My sexual life is
Of
perfect.
course.
I don't have any problem. But this for me was like kind of because for me like when I say something and the immediate reaction is that you need to protect yourself, this for me shows how difficult is for you that situation, how stressful that you immediately need to say perfect, no problem there. I never experienced my sexual life is fantastic. I say, okay, okay. And actually, what I've experienced is that, you know, they have issues, in my practice to say when sex goes wrong, when they don't feel like when they might feel rejected in bed, that is just difficult for them to admit it because of course this affected their idea of being desired, and especially if is people that have anxious attachment. This can be, of course, this is not one side. I'm not speaking for all men. This is what I've been experiencing.
And in terms of, you know, you we mentioned men and we mentioned women. Do you work with couples when it comes to somatic sex coaching?
Yeah, yeah. So with couples, it always is always like one of my own experience has always been one of the two, either the man or either the woman who contacted me to ask for support. Um, but in this way, I'm always kind to understand if first to speak with individually to see where they are, and then with the couple together. But it's always interesting to understand because to understand if actually the other partner is okay to join. Sometimes you receive an email from someone, either the one of the two, one yeah,
Partners, yeah.
people partners, and then you just wanted to make sure that there is actually that they both agree to show up,
Right, right.
Consent.
because most of the time there is the willingness of one partner to go
Yeah.
to to go to therapy to heal, and then the other person doesn't want or is not ready, so you need to check the readiness also, um, because otherwise if you don't want to show up, it's very difficult to to have also some kind of yeah, results, kind of.
So, when you're counseling, whether it's an individual or a couple, what does a typical coaching session actually look like? Like, how do you start off, and what really is the end result that you're hoping for with the client?
Well, I mean, I think you heard it for sure many times, but again, there is not one size fits all, and it always depends. But for me, of course, also depends on what is the issues, and if there is a previous story, if there is I need to always check the awareness of the person of to if they know how to get in contact with their body, if they are able to name what their feelings, because if in that sense, then there is also the kind of um, work on embodiment. So how to get to know your body, because you kind of need to understand your body clues to first, moving into emotional empowerment and erotic empowerment. You need to know your body also to understand where your pleasure points are, for examples. You need to know your body if, for example, in a partner dynamic, you are very disappointed when your partner does this or say that. And a lot of the work is also on how to teach clients to vulnerably communicate to their partner how they are feeling. Because resentment is actually one of the biggest enemy in that kills intimacy, you know. So I will say, first of all, I always like to hear if they have clear in mind what goals they have. They want to heal something, they want to explore their desires, they want to, be better partners, for example. And then from there, I always want to check what is their level of awareness body wise, because mind wise I want to say, like, we are always very good in being in our stories and explaining why and that and say that that. So also to guide the clients towards a body experience, and then from there creating erotic empowerment. When I say erotic empowerment means, oh, I know this is what is turning me on. This is what doesn't turn me on. This is how my body works. These are the fantasy I have that I need to have or I like to have to that turn me on. And this is where how my body, the map of the pleasure mapping of my body works like this is how I can communicate. Is a lot of work on boundaries and consent, but again it depends on the um, where the client is in terms of this knowledge of their own body. And so according to that, things of course change. And of course, the emotional empowerment is also a key thingy. And with because you need to be vulnerable enough with your own self to understand why, for example, there might be certain part of your body that feel like frozen, where it's difficult to go, and you want to be vulnerable with your own self. Um, but yeah, embodiment is kind of the first step.
So I'm having visions or images of that one episode of Goop that I watched where they go into the vulnerable sessions with, I guess it was multiple couples, where they're exploring touch and using objects external to the body to move along the skin and experience sensation. Would like what you're doing, what you do with couples, would it be, or individuals, would it be something along those lines?
Yeah, and from yeah, touch is part of that. Of course, there are certain boundaries.
Right.
It's not that our practice is with clothes on and we don't touch certain part, uh, but is to understand when you say when I say understanding and knowing your bodies and knowing what is pleasurable for you. This is the key things in sexuality, because to actually be good and enjoy sex, you need to know what you like, and to understand what you like, you need to experience it. Otherwise, how do you know that? And so. For some people, it's so difficult to allow themselves to explore their own body. Like, for example, with masturbation, sometimes we want to go strictly to the point. But we don't give ourselves the time to actually, touch our body with a feather touch or light touch and see, oh, actually, this part of my body really is a turn on for me. Actually, my nipple is more a turn on for me than, I don't know, my cleat, for example. And of course, so you need to take kind of notes. So in the session, like we might kind of help understand the client to understand, okay, which kind of body is good for you. Is just by touching like this, or you need to be grabbed. So it's kind of a journey. And then the coaching I've been, I mean, the school I've done is also is a kind of approach for which, you know, there is this relationship with the client. So the coach is not, you know, you're here and I'm there, and we are just is an experiential practice, so that then the client can really understand what happened to him, and also going back home and ask, you know, the partner, if they have a partner or whatever partner they have, to, you know, to teach them what they want, how they want to be touched, because they have
Yeah.
experiences safely in the studio, in the practice, what they like, or they have been able to experiencing the same things at home because they have had an experiential experience, like a practical experience of what was good for them. Because, you know, sometimes, you know, you say something and they say, oh, I want to do that, but sometimes you actually don't know how to do that.
Mhm.
You know you want A, but then how do you do A? You know, and if there is someone who shows you what how A can be, you have certain tools that then you can practice at home. Because you have visual tool, your experiential tool, you have touching tools, and you are kind of more, yeah, you build new skills, let's say.
And it's crazy because they just want to keep sex in a box, right? Like, I mean, we've
Yeah.
talked about this many times on the show. I mean, could you imagine having Chiara and King Noir and all of us? Wow, what a show that could be! Because, like, no, because on that show, like, it really opened up my mind to how my relationships with males are very different from most people. I like guy friends, and then you get different things from your friends. But, when I'm listening to you talk, I think, yo, what the fuck? Why are people keeping sex from us? Good sex, not just penetration, but the touch.
Yeah.
We're not like,
But the things, this is actually the problem with sex. When we were talking about psychology, is that I think we all grew up with a very. I grew up with an existing sexual education. Maybe in Canada things are better, but the thing is that you learn sex from your peers, and when you learn sex from your peers, you learn to like what your peers like. But then your peers like what they also listen from the other peers. So there is this myth then of sex to be just one way,
yeah,
one conventional way, and all the rest is, I'm always saying that we are all a bit kinky, because kink is the non-conventional sex. But if you think the conventional sex is, according to our society, is the monogamous sex, penetrative sex. But then, so in my own way, also oral sex is not a conventional sex. So I'm kinky too,
Right.
to a certain
yeah,
extent.
yeah. But that's what I'm saying, like
Um,
breaking those
so
binary definitions, right? Like,
exactly,
and
yeah.
so I've shared on the show that I do pelvic exercises. Do you remember, like, I do pelvic, and I realized through the pelvic, what's the word that we called it?
Kegels.
Kegels,
Kegels.
yeah. So I had to start doing Kegels. I was annoyed. But Kegels really help like sort out a lot in your body and in your pelvis and how much you need. And, I actually got my husband doing them with me now. So we both Kegeling it out because no, because I said to him, no, 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 if I have to do this, you have to do this too, right? But I think you mentioned something, Kara, what's important. People don't feel safe to explore because we presented
Yeah.
sex in a particular way. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy. He touches her boobs a bit, and then, he goes, she might give him oral sex, but oh, God forbid he would give her oral sex, right? And then they have sex, and she looks like she's having an orgasm when we know it's friggin' hard for women to orgasm. And there's different types of orgasms. And, so out of the three of us, Kara, my mom is the open sex one. My mom is the one who took me to look for condoms. She taught us about birth control. She had a thing with walking around naked in our house. We were like, my brothers and I were like, what the hell is going on here? But she really opened it up for us a lot more than most people. I know Oz and Mar were saying, no, 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 no. There's still kids who believe if you hold hands, you get pregnant. I'm looking at school
Yeah.
like, I tell them all the time, are you serious? No, you're not getting pregnant. You're not kissing and getting HIV. HIV and AIDS are
My God.
different. Right? And like
Yeah.
this is the kind of myths that are still out there. And in some ways we see it manifest itself in the law, like Roe versus Wade, still controlling over women's bodies and what we should do with our bodies and what women should and should not do and what's a whore and what's not a whore. Like all this plays into this shit. And we don't and it's actually like one of the shittiest things. We end up living our life having mediocre sex lives and then dying. Like that fucking
It's true.
sucks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That sucks.
Exactly.
Like
But also because there is also this we don't feel safe to ask
Right.
about sex. We don't feel safe to talk. I have close friends, and I see when I start speaking about it, they might feel uncomfortable. They listen, but they don't share with me what they are, what their sexual lives is. We never had talk about masturbation with my with my friends. Now that I've said I am a sex somatic coach, certain people, they talk, but most of the time this the discussion around sex stops at I had an orgasm yesterday, or I had the one night stand yesterday, or I had sex with this person, or I want so much to have sex. Stop. Now, if you have enjoyed it, what did you like about it? What you didn't like about it? What were you feeling safe? What about the consent? What about boundary? You know, not at all. Or are you happy with your sex life? No, I had sex. Fantastic. That's it. These are the
yeah,
conversation around it. And the people don't feel safe to actually go deep about it or ask. But for me, I really envisioning or dream this world where like you can actually add sex in like your normal description. Like, I'm Chiara, I'm 36, I'm Italian, and I like red, and I also like oral sex.
mm,
Without saying with shame,
Right.
or I like to I like I'm very curious with everything about blah blah blah. But this creates so much. Of course, to say this, when it's possible, of course you always need to take into account the different things. But when you always need to count till 10 before you might share something about your sexual fantasy or your sexual desires or who you are sexually. People are still like shaming themselves to share something about their desires, even in a group of
yeah.
friends.
This is so
If the group
true.
of friends even talk about it.
Right. Well,
Exactly.
now that we have this safe space, Kiara, I have
With all
some
the
questions
listeners.
with
With
all
all
our
the
listeners.
listeners. With all the
I do.
listeners.
First of all, I think it's key what you said about resentment killing intimacy. And it was one of my questions about the pandemic, but I think it's a deeper question because I know we've all been in relationships where we felt resentful. And I can absolutely 1000% agree that even if I was incredibly sexually attracted to a man, because I'm a straight female, that if I started feeling any kind of resentment or anger, sex is off the table.
Yeah.
It
I can
doesn't even
definitely
cross my
identify with you,
mind.
Oz. I can
I don't
identify
want
with
to
that.
touch you. But however, and we were talking about acts of service and our love languages, when things were good and we were in a good place, then they become so much more desirable to us and we want to have sex with them. So I just wanted to say that that point really struck with me. But my real question is, Kiara, now that we're talking, I want to know about orgasms. I want to know a little bit more. Can you share with me? You mentioned that women come to you and ask you, like, about is there something wrong with me if I'm not orgasming a certain way? Do you feel that you said it's not one size fits all? But do you feel that orgasms and the large spectrum of orgasms are accessible to everyone?
I mean, for me, I always like to think this way. Like, the things is that we think that orgasm is the ultimate goal of sex. But actually, the ultimate goal of sex is pleasure.
Hmm.
So I always teach about pleasure, and pleasure can comes different
Mm.
ways. And so, pleasure is a journey and can start, and everybody has a different way to allow pleasure in their body. So, of course, like orgasm is fantastic, it's amazing. But pleasure is even more fantastic because is even longer. It starts with, I don't
The way
know,
they
even
look
high
at you.
gazing. Exactly. It started with gazing. It can be dirty talks. It can be sounds. It can be allowing yourself to make noises, and that permission to be so loud that gives you so much pleasure to you. So the moment you shift, of course, if you take orgasm, then you have your orgasm from your nipples, and then your cervix, and the clit and the G spot and whatever. But if you take the attention from all this, that always has been the big attention, thanks Freud, uh,
Thank you, Freud.
uh, and then you move it to actually the sensual, sexual
Mm.
experience, being an experience of in pursuit of pleasure. You take off your shoulders so much
Yeah.
pressure, but so much pressure because you
You
just
can
want
just
to
be, yeah.
enjoy.
And
Yeah.
actually makes
You can
it
just be.
more accessible, right? Like if
Exactly.
orgasm is
This is
not
what
the
makes
goal and it's just to feel and enjoy, yo, everybody can feel and enjoy, right? Like in the Goop Netflix you were talking about, Mar, one of them got stimulated by their ears. Do you remember? The touching of the ear. One of them really got turned on by that. But I think that's a monumental thing you just told us on the show. Take orgasm off the table and put pleasure on the table. And
yeah.
yeah.
And this is especially for for whoever, and it took me so much time for me also to have this switch,
Hmm.
and especially for those people who have sex as an enemy, who are abused,
Mm,
assault. Thinking of sex, thinking of orgasm is so difficult. Or on the other way around, they might have different way to this is more complicated topics, but thinking about pleasure or train their body to allow themselves to have pleasure with the small portions, because also pleasure is difficult for, it's so, it's like an area. And so when you move the attention again from orgasm to pleasure, pleasure can be also I'm drinking a cup of tea and I'm eye gazing, playing with my, partner, just looking at each other nicely and beautifully. And this is for, again, for a person who has difficulties to allow pleasure in their body from a sexual
mm.
perspective, is already an experience that make them feel like, okay, I can do it. And overall for all of us, I think pleasure is more the word to use
Yeah.
that can make sex a friend,
Yeah. This pisses
and
me off
not.
because now I'm just thinking of decolonized bullshit because that comes down to fucking comes down to men, right? Orgasms come down to men. Like they orgasm easier than women do. And our whole culture, especially in North America, is based around these sex scenes where the guy is like, remember that episode of Sex in the City where she sleeps with the godfather of Miranda's child? And she thinks it's going to be good sex and he jackhammers her. Like it's ridiculous. But for him, it was great sex. And for her, she couldn't walk for 3 days, Carrie. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the
Yeah.
image that North America puts out, right? Like, the
Yeah.
girl gets a good fuck, and therefore the guy orgasms. And so, this culture around orgasms to me is an extension of patriotism, or like, not patriot, what's the word, Miranda? Patriarchalism, and how sex is designed around men's pleasure and women's submission. And that irritates me.
Yeah, and I mean, is more all around. It's always been a bit like this. And when I said before Freud, is because kind of it was saying that the good sex was the penetrative sex. So taking out of the show, out of the table, the cleat and
Yeah.
other part of our body, as like if they are not. And this is again is the pressure about orgasm, true penetrative, penetrative orgasm, because then me that I have more pleasure with my through my cleat. What if my orgasm is
Yeah.
not important?
Thank God we've evolved
But
since then.
We better.
Well, some of us.
Thank God.
but I also back to the patriarchy, because this is my thought, and I'm interesting to know what do you think, because so of course the patriarchal part of this is all these shame-induced messages and building sex upon what is actually the man pleasure. And I'm saying this without saying anything bad around men. I mean, men, are, as we said before, are also victim of all these
Yeah.
messages.
Yeah.
But what I think is also been creating an issues nowadays is that like we have women that have been growing up with this idea that sex is dirty, that you need to be kind of you don't need to behave in a certain way because you might be labeled as a slut or a whore, whatever things. And so you need to kind of be, or that you can get pregnant, or you can get so the explanation around sex while growing up is a bit the sex is dirty. Yeah, be careful, you might get pregnant. Be careful, you might get some,
STD.
STDs, yeah.
STD, all these kind of things. So you always face sex with kind of attention. Oh my God, what happened to me? I had this friend that the first time she had sex with the very little information, she was having a panic attack because she was thinking she could have get pregnant, but like out of nothing. Like I think all of a sudden her fears just blew up. But then at the same time, what I wanted to say is that the and maybe you girls can help me phrase it better. But I think that feminists, the extensive part of it, is also kind of creating a bit of harm to vulva owners around sex. And what I mean is that because we kind of want to be badass women, that we don't need kind of any help, and we tend to be badass rock star sex. We know it all, we know what we want, and because we think we know it all and we don't need anything, we actually might have issues to know actually really what we want. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying. We create
A
like
facade.
another sort of
Yeah.
myth that we are badass rock star sexual, and actually through sex is our way to, I don't know, whatever. And I think that this is another way that somatically can bring women very far from connected with their own body, with their own
Yeah.
pleasures, with their own sensations, because we need to be strong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
I've
think
seen. Go ahead, Mar.
I was just going to say that's a really interesting point because, like, if you look at it from a feminist, like, I guess more fundamentalist feminist perspective, it's like this idea that, okay, if you want to take the whole patriarchal aspect out of it, it's like, we're taking back our bodies, we're taking back control of every aspect of sex for ourselves. But the reality is that there are some women out there who really do want to have a partnership and really do want to have a connection with a man, and maybe there are some women who are actually perfectly fine with not necessarily being the rock star in the bedroom, right? It's to me like
Yeah.
if you want to get into maybe another aspect of kink, this whole idea of dominant and submissive, that too, like being a submissive there's nothing wrong with that. It's not inherently making you less less feminine because you are doing this. That's a consensual decision between,
Hmm.
the woman and their partner, and that's between them. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with any sort of feminist agenda or anything of that
Yeah,
nature.
totally.
No,
Yeah.
I totally get it. I know
Totally.
there's a phenomenon around the age group that I work with that, the women or the young ladies, um, how do I say this nicely? They're fucking around like dudes. They're like, "Oh, I can just fuck who I want when I want." But I'm like, "But you're not doing anything for women's movement. You're just
That
like
you know
you're
what it
just
is? It's like
it's
taking on the all of these like very empowered female rappers that we see today, the
yeah,
Meg the Stallions and the City Girls, and adopting only one aspect of that
yeah,
empowerment, and they what they don't understand is that there's a lot of marketing behind a lot of that bravado, but there's you've got to understand that there's emotions involved, there's consent that's involved, there's consideration of
yeah.
how your body is going to deal or
React.
recover or react from those kinds of
Absolutely.
hookups or whatever it is that they're doing.
Because
Absolutely.
realistically, psychologically, women have a different attachment to sex than men, right? So to me,
Yeah,
I agree with you, Cara. I would say being a feminist is being able to make the choices for yourself, educated choices for yourself about every area of your life, right? So, like I told you, I have to
yeah,
do Kegels. You're my husband. I love you. I want you to do Kegels with me too, right? I'm asking you to do it
Yeah.
because, well, I find them annoying, but they do help. And that's what I want. Like that to me is a feminist, a woman who understands her needs, educates herself in her needs, and asks for what she wants in a manner that, is accessible to everybody. But I understand what you're saying. Like, the women who you're not doing anything new. In fact, I think you're kind of mimicking this very stereotype that we're trying to break in that situation.
exactly.
Yeah, for
Hmm.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm
Kiara,
in different breed. Go ahead, Mar.
Kiara, I have a question around a particular subject, just off of what you were saying a bit earlier about how comfortable we feel with our bodies. And I'd love for you to touch on the subject of nudity, because there are so many
Mm,
people who, we're all inundated with images on social media of what the perfect body should look like, or how, we compare ourselves to other people, and what their bodies look like. So I would be interested to know how a person's perception of what their body actually looks like, how that factors into somatic sex education.
I mean, for sure. I mean, how? Yeah, there are different things. For sure, like not kind of liking your own body. Of this as a kind of consequences, of course, on how you also experience also sex, because of course you might feel like not at ease with your own body. You might not feel at ease to be and live and embody your own body. And actually, being, sexual trauma is not just and only having been victim of assault or rape. Is also any experience that have been affected, kind of your sexual, any experience that can have any effect on your sexual organs. So if you have been bullied, or if you're a person that always been looking in the mirror and says, I'm the most ugly person on earth because, according to the standard, I'm fat, I have stretch marks, and my feet are this, or my hair, whatever things, you're just saying to your body that it's not perfect. And saying to your body that the way you look, the way you are, is not good. You're saying to yourself, I'm not desirable. I'm not worthy of pleasure. I'm not worthy of desire. So when before I was saying, is when clients come in, it's always, there is always a different journey, because if there is a client that come in and says, I want to have better sex, I want to be the queen in bed, and then we discovered that, there is a fundamental hate of your own body. We need to work on that before you can also allow yourself to to see and feel within yourself how worthy of pleasure you are. Because pleasure is a birthright. I always says that we women were born with a clit, and the only function of the clit is pleasure. There is no other function of the clit than pleasure.
That's cool.
And we are all born with that. Also, nudity, I mean, when it comes, I don't know, there are a lot of artists that that design a different vulvas. um and oh my god, I don't remember her name. Betty, that's I mean, she was a pioneering in sexual education. She was a pioneering in I don't remember her name right now, in masturbation. And actually, one of her work was on designing uh, all the different shapes of our vulva. Because she was saying that one of sense of people feeling bad with their own body when it comes to sex is because they were thinking that there was just one possible way to have a vulva, which is mostly the vulva you might see in the not very ethical porn.
Right.
They're just kind of Barbie vulva,
Yeah.
I would say.
They just
And so
zero in
people,
on that part of the body, and the legs are spread,
yeah,
and all you're seeing it from the outside, but few people know all of the different parts and what
yeah.
their function is, and yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there were so many people that have been surgery on their own vulva to make that perfect,
Look at like that, yeah.
according to, standards that don't exist.
Right.
Because we are born with that. There is nothing wrong. So, again, when it comes to nudity, of course, our society, that says that we need to be, first in the 90s was that, the model. Now is that, you need to have this, it's always changing.
Yeah.
And the idea that is
Evolution
always
and trends
changing.
of how the body should look. Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, the idea is that the body change. Like in the 90s, there were the skinny one, and now is the more the curvy, but this way. And now there is, the body positivity, also say something about, if 10 years ago this was how people were liking the body, and now is this. So it means that, it can always change, and there is actually not a real idea of perfection. You're just perfect the way you are, it's but yeah.
That's the crazy thing about it's just crazy because it's not just sex, it's in everything we do. It's in all the messaging, it's in the packaging, right? It's in the what I think what really hit is like what you say to yourself, right? Like folks, we are literally talking ourselves out of bad sex, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're
That's
like,
Yeah.
exactly what we're doing.
like that. Oz and I talk all the time about filters, and we work out. I mean, Mar works out. We all three of us work out, but I need us three to ask ourselves, what are we telling our bodies when we work out? Because I'll be damned if we talk ourselves out of bad sex, ladies. Like, I don't know.
I'm
Like,
never talking myself out of sex ever.
ah! No, but I'm
Ever.
talking about talking yourself into good sex. So if Kara's saying there's a way that you can talk yourself out of bad sex, that means the opposite is true. You can talk
Yeah.
yourself into good sex. Like, oh, I love that roll because that roll allows me to roll this way, right? Like, use your imperfections for the pleasure. I think those are two big things that I'm taking away. One, let's take orgasms off the table because y'all know not everybody orgasms the same way. Sometimes it's harder for others, but the key goal is to have pleasure in sex, and two, talk nice to yourself. God damn, we could all
Yeah.
follow that advice.
I think that was
Like,
really good
Yeah.
advice. The idea of changing how you changing how you talk to yourself, changing what language, what words you're using, not just for yourself, but for other people as well, right? The worst body shaming is the body shaming we do to ourselves. That's
And
Absolutely.
we
that's
do
what
it
it
more
is.
than anybody else. We
More than
Yeah.
talk
anybody.
negatively to ourselves than anybody else. Because if anybody else talked to us the way we talk to ourselves,
We
we
beat
would
their ass.
probably cut them off. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
It's a
purge
wrap.
them.
Yeah, and also like remember, I think that this I think the things that there is not one size fits all. Like there, that sex is also science. There are like things that says this is how it works. Like desire, is fantastic the first months, and then decrease. And for women is like this, for men is like this. Knowing this fact is actually helps you uh, feeling okay. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not different from any other person because this is actually science. This is actually how your body works.
Yeah.
This is how you have this fantasy. Everybody has this fantasy. I mean, everybody has fantasy. You have this fantasy. I have this fantasy. You have this fantasy. Talking. If we were able to talk openly about it, you will. There will be less and less people worrying about their own abilities, about their own
Yeah.
body, sexually functioning, because, yeah, that is, because sometimes I like to speak about science because most of the time, science, it feels like more understandable. Oh, it's science. Kind of you give more, weight to it. Oh,
Right.
it's science.
It's
It's
more
a scientific.
credible, more
It's more
trustworthy.
credible.
Yeah.
Trustworthy. Yeah, this is science, guys. So, and sex is also science
Yeah.
because it's all a biochemical things happening in our body. It's always hormones happening in our body. And so sometimes I use that also to, especially for very analytical people, things that they need to understand things. So when sometimes things are difficult to understand because you need to feel it. And when it's difficult to feel it, then I go back to science
Yeah.
as a first step,
A
Right.
concrete step. Yeah.
And Chiara, we talked about your practice involving maybe some touch. It does it have to be in person? Do you also do somatic sex coaching virtually?
Well, I mean, it's actually mostly virtually. So I just guide people. So I have to say that all my clients are virtual,
Okay. That's good to
except,
know.
yeah. I mean, and with the pandemic, I think these things in this last year applies to a lot of people. But the things is that you can direct. Of course, in person is better because you can actually is better in the sense that when you have to do this kind of exercise, it can be more effective. But you can still do the same and have the same outcome with guidance. Actually, sometimes what happens is that people might feel like more safe with having the session online, feeling more productive to the wall, to the the
They can
desktop.
hide.
At the same times, I have to say it's very difficult because sometimes online is can also help because people there is still a taboo in asking for help. I had so many people that contact me and they look like crazy. I have these issues and I need to, and it felt like, oh my God, you want to start tomorrow? Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I
Let's
was
not
on.
waste any
I said,
time here,
yes,
Chiara.
And I say, yeah, let's do it. And then disappear. And then says, no, I cannot do it. And I don't, I have questions. And I say, okay, what questions? And then you feel like the fear. So I always try to accompany for a bit that fear that needs to be cuddled. But then, of course, it cannot be forever and ever. But there is so much still taboo not only around sexuality, but also asking for help. Because when you show up in a practice, either online or in person, you need to say yes to yourself. And sometimes
Mm,
we have challenges to give ourselves that attention, that
yeah.
we actually are worthy of being supported or to ask for help. So sometimes when there are these two things, an online practice somehow feels safer to the
Mm.
client. Yeah.
So, all this to say, we have to love ourselves more. Like, literally, concretely, that's
Yeah.
we have to love ourselves more. Like, we are really missing out when we're not showing ourselves that kind of love. I have to say, Kara, I love my gynecologist. Sounds weird. He's a sexologist, gyno, and a GP, general practitioner, all in one.
Oh,
And
wow.
oh my God, I ask him tons of questions all the time. He's like, okay, what is it today, Nisha? But whenever we have appointments, no, because this is what I do in high school, right? I've taught sex ed, so I always ask him a ton of questions, and he'll give me old models, and like he'll take them apart and show, and he's just like, you have a problem. But I love it. I love asking those questions, and it's funny that I thought I would have felt safer with a female gyno, but I feel extremely safe with him. And maybe because we started this journey young. I was 19 when I picked him up, and we've been together. He's retiring soon, which traumatizes me on some levels. But um, he's always been quite direct, and I like that approach. And he's just like, so I said, oh, unfortunately, my aunt passed away from vulva cancer. Very rare, very rare. So when it happened, I sent him a message. Hello, doctor. So my aunt has vulva cancer. Am I in trouble? And he's like, no, it's not genetic. And he was explaining to me actually, vulva cancer can originate itself from HPV. And so he was explaining it to me and how it was going. And he was like, and he wrote, this is not to say that women shouldn't be sexually active, but a lot of times HPV stems from multiple sexual partners and things that we're not doing to protect ourselves. And so I like that kind of directive, like you're saying, that analytical mind, the science. He was just giving it to me step by step. And I was like, okay, but how do I avoid it? And like, these are the things I was asking him because it's a very rare form of cancer. It's this cancer of the skin of the vagina. It's very rare and it's very hard to treat. And he's very good at that. He makes me feel very safe. He talks about the instruments. I like being with him. I thought I would want a female gyno now that I'm older, but no, although I have to say something about, by the way, if you don't know, listeners, there's a lot more male gynecologists in the world than females. Females weren't encouraged for a very long time not to be gynecologists.
Oh,
But there's a
wow.
part of me that's like, why wouldn't a woman be a gynecologist if we have the same parts? So there is an increase of women becoming gynecologists, especially specialists. And so I do appreciate seeing my specialist versus my regular gyno because the specialist, when you tell your female gyno about cramps or whatever, 10 times, 9 times out of 10, she knows what you're talking about. She knows what you're talking about, right? Where the male gynecologist is like, yes, and the scientific, no, bitch, this hurts. And it's a different type of pain, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's interesting that that field has been male dominated for a long time, which brings me back to my point that maybe sex has been presented to us in a very male oriented way in North
It
America.
has been.
And
Yeah.
It
But I
definitely
think
yeah,
has
all
been.
over the world. And
yeah.
now you were mentioning Kegel exercise. I've been
Oh, I
reading,
hate
and
them.
but actually there are some research and some other people that says that actually they are not that they are not
Effective?
yeah, I mean, it's not the right word. I don't want to say, because I'm not a pelvic therapist. I'm not a pelvic therapist, I want to say. But there have been research that says that actually not all the time this Kegel exercise works. Of course, then everybody's different, everybody's unique.
Yeah.
So what works for you might not work for me. But back to also this idea that, and a lot of things have been developed around male bodies. And I was reading these interesting things for which even yoga exercise have been developed around, male
The male
practitioners.
yogis. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really? I had
yes.
no
Yeah.
idea.
So
Because
like
in
yogas,
India, yogis are
yoga.
primarily men.
Exactly. So why there are certain, like, so for me, we are pushing our bodies to do, us vulva owners, like women, like, to do certain positions in yoga, while these positions are more easy for men bodies. Uh,
Mhm.
because you there we just a different compositions, and for me this is always a bit of question mark on everything. Now I'm also have a
Absolutely.
very curious mind, so I always and because in my own journey of healing my own sexual life, I start kind of questioning everything. Because I
Right.
was thinking I like this, but do I really like this? Because this is what
Yeah,
they told me, or they told me that it's risky. But is this risky? Do I feel safe to explore that or not? Or is this so? Asking, loving yourself, and actually feeling what is good or not to yourself, with yourself, is a
I
key
would
thing.
I would
that
also say adding to that is also accepting that you can change your mind at any time. You may start off
absolutely.
thinking that you like
Absolutely.
something, but then you evolve and move into maybe another area of sex that,
Yeah,
you didn't even realize that you might enjoy, but all of a sudden it's like, hey, that feels good, or this actually is new to me and I'd like to try it more. I think that is, one of the common things that we also need to talk about is giving people room to explore and change their minds, especially as you get older,
absolutely.
because there's a lot of things that you thought about sex one way when you were, in your teens or in your 20s or in your 30s versus being in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And then your
Absolutely.
body change. So as
Yeah.
your body
Yeah.
changes, you like different things.
Hmm.
So
It's
you're
like
just allowed to be different and change, period. That's
exactly,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
I
That
think
I
the
think
re-education.
is a key. Would you say, because this is also I wanted to ask you this question, because I always says we are all different. It's now in this modern world where language is very important. Will you say we are all different, or we are all unique, or we are all different bodies because we are all unique? What it would be the best way to describe the
Mar, you're the writer. I'm passing that to Mar.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of, again, to tap into what Nisha had mentioned during another one of our episodes, you mentioned human design, and I've been like obsessed with it ever since you
Me
mentioned
too.
it.
Oh God.
And
We got to
so
get Chiara into it.
yeah, so recently I actually looked at my chart and I signed up to the app, the My Human Design app.
Me too.
And I was able to get a detailed view of every aspect of what my chart read. And that's the interesting thing, is that there's no one unique blueprint for individuals. Everybody is different. You are different compared to everyone else on this earth. And even when you think you all have the same gifts, the same interests, the same likes, dislikes, there's always one thing that differentiates you from somebody else. So,
Oh
yeah,
wow,
it's
this is
it's
very
really the
interesting.
same thing.
So
Yeah.
my human, for those of you who remember, listeners, my human design is, so I think most of the listeners know that I have a religious flair, and my human design is sort of brings together all the different types of charting. So whether it's Vedic, whether it's Asian astrology, whether it's Tantric astrology, Greek astrology, and chakras, all of that together. And a friend of mine was like, I think you're a splenic thinker. And I was like, bitch, what are you talking about? Like, I'm
Like,
like, what
what
are you
is that?
talking about?
Splenic?
Right. So basically, a splenic thinker is somebody who thinks from their gut instincts. And I was like, oh, yeah, 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 that's me. So she turned me on to the human design, and I turned the ladies on to the human design. So they have an app. And the human design, you really need your birth date. So it's a little bit inaccessible if you don't have your birth date.
Birthday and the time of day
No,
that you were
the
born.
time, right. It's not your
Yeah.
birth date that's inaccessible, it's the time. And so I plug it in, and I don't know what you are, Mar, but I'm a projector.
I'm a
So,
generator, a pure
okay.
generator.
So I'm a projector. So when you read through it, like all the gifts that I have and like how you think and the guides, Kara, I'll show you my human design. Given what I work with you, you'll see exactly why I'm in the position I'm in. Because a projector is somebody who sees the world very differently and guides people along that way. Like we're able to see beyond the boundaries and beyond the scope of things.
Hmm.
And projectors have very unique gifts. But projectors like to be touched. More specifically, I like to be touched. It's my thing. And I thought, oh, that's interesting because usually when I do love languages, it's words of affirmation and quality time. But it's true. I am a toucher. Like I like to touch on the shoulder. When I met Kara, we were like, hi. We hugged each other the first time we ever met. I've seen her for months online. The first time we ever met, we hugged each other. I'm a toucher. But human design is really cool. I was thinking, for those of you who are Muslim, I was thinking, is it a bit haram? Because we really don't fuck around with that astrology stuff, but it's okay. My auntie says it's okay, so I'm still messing with the human design. But a splenic thinker is someone who thinks from their gut, and I do. When I meet someone and I feel the auras right away, and I know who I don't want to be around and who I do want to be around. That's a
Yeah.
splenic thinker. You think from your gut. Your gut asks you, and it actually told me something interesting. It told me to ask my gut questions. Now, for those of us who are religious, I rephrase that to let me ask God questions. And if God thinks it's right, he'll tell my gut, and my gut will tell me. That's how I got around it. And it actually works because, Mara and I are into discernment. You hear things, you listen for signs and stuff.
Yeah.
But it actually works I've been very discerning my whole life. So I'm a splenic thinker. For those of you, check it out, the human design. For human design, you want to hook us up with a discount now that we're promoting you. Just
My human
saying,
design. Yeah.
my human design.
Yeah.
So Mar, what kind of thinker are you? Do you
Oh
remember?
my gosh, no, I don't remember. But one of the things that I think it really ties into what Chiara is talking about, especially in her practice, is that in the area of in your practice, there's a lot of focus around senses, and
Yeah,
touch was one, but also for me, my key sense is taste. I it's not just about food and what I'm eating, but also about taste in fashion, taste in different trends and things of that nature. I feel like the senses and are just part of that whole, and energy are part of what you were talking about, Chiara, when it comes to somatic sex, that we're not really enjoying it as much as we should, and we're focusing so much on the end goal, which is orgasm, and not so much the experience of sitting in it,
of the pleasure.
Yeah.
exploring each other's bodies, touching each other's bodies, pinching, biting, tasting,
Yeah.
poking, all of these different things. And it just is making me more aware of how much we are not really in tune as much as we think we are. We
Yeah.
really
And
aren't.
missing
Um,
out.
Yeah, yeah,
senses is really like a key word because if you can explore your body from from like the arousal perspective, like okay, you go with taste, and taste, starting with what you said, can be, I don't know, maybe you might try to like some uh, whipped cream on your body and lick it, for example.
No, I don't do food, Kiara. I do not do food during sex. That is not for me. Don't put any honey on me. I don't want any strawberries involved. Don't insert any cucumbers. Just no, no food.
Yeah, then if you go to sound, and actually this is a very things about women or vulva owners, like, because I don't know if you might, how this might land in your body. What I'm going to say is that, but sound is very a turn on. Like when during
Yes.
sex you says give permission to yourself to do some to yeah to vocalize your
To make
sound,
sounds and vocal.
make
Yeah.
sound. So I don't know if you ever tried, like if you paid attention, but when you vocalize that sound, the experience of
Yeah.
whatever you are doing in that moment is 10,000 more, because you are kind of
It's
giving
heightened for sure.
permission to to your body to woohoo, that
Let go.
let go. And it's very difficult for
Yeah.
women to vocalize that because, oh no, the neighbors, or no, this is actually if I,
We're gonna
The
wake the
kids.
kids.
or we are with the
It's
kids,
Yeah.
or we, or no, what are going to think, or no, I, they say that if I say like this is so dirty to say that. And actually, you know or sound can also be, you need to you need your partner to say something like dirty talk, like to say you're a whore or you're the bad
Yeah.
one, for example. But you need to experience that to make the experience of sex 100%. And then you go, to what you like to see. And maybe you need to have, the light on, the light off, candles. Your partner needs to look in a certain way. Back also to taste, but when you look something and you say, "Oh, I like that," is your side that is involved. So you also need to be involved with something you like to see.
Yeah.
And then the hearing, sound. I'm missing something. Then of course touch,
Smell.
smell, smell.
Smell.
and
For me,
smell.
it's smell. I really
Exactly.
believe my husband gives off a smell that only I can smell. And I smell it. And he's like, "You're crazy." I said, "No, no, no. You have us." He has a smell. We're
That's a
animals.
same
He has
smell. Yeah.
pheromones. He has a smell, and I recognize the smell.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, "Ooh," and he's like, "Get away from me."
And
Because I smell it. And when or there's a time where my body smells it and I'm like, "Oh." And
Maybe
he's like,
that's
"Oh,
your primary sense, is it?
yeah.
yeah." Well, I think, well, I just know it comes at a certain time. Like I can
Okay.
smell it. I
All right.
smell him. So either I'm in something's happening, but he has a smell that I smell
But
that I'm
this is
like,
a
"Oh,
important information, because if you know, for example, that smell is what turns you on, for example, you can ask your partner to say, "Please put it on," because this is what helps
I
me
want
to
that
be turned
smell."
on. Actually, also smell is the primal kind of senses. So
Yeah.
when we smell something, our mind body goes immediately to the first time we smell that flavor.
Oh my God, yes.
So, like
It's
for
like
example,
chocolate, right, Oz?
Oh, yes.
uh,
It's like chocolate. You could put chocolate on me. I'm not opposed to fruit,
Yeah,
so
I'm with Mar. I don't want to be sticky. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
put it all over.
Not that
But
sticky.
it's
Not
funny
that
you
kind of
say
sticky.
that, and I really think we got a good re-education of ourselves. I was going to say of sex, but it's more a re-education of ourselves. Like, if
Yeah.
there's one thing you learned today, listeners, was get reacquainted with yourself, date yourself. Don't worry, it's not cheating if you're in a relationship. Just date yourself because that's the longest relationship you're going to have. So date yourself, figure it out what you like. And you can always find Chiara on her Instagram called Intimacy. And the way she spells it is unique. It's Intimasee. So intimacy. I almost think it's like you're into me. Don't worry, I'm weird
no,
like
but
that. I
like
think
it's
of weird
actually,
things.
and it's also intimacy underscore, because there were too many.
Uh
But actually, it came from that. Into me, I see, kind of it is, because
okay. So I'm not as weird as I
now
think.
you're
Okay,
very
good.
smart, because I took out the CY and I put C as a way you need to look into yourself
To
first
yourself.
before
Exactly.
you can be intimate with someone else, and
With
so
someone else.
Agreed.
Yeah.
emotionally, erotically. So
So here, folks, you don't
Chiara.
need no dating subscriptions. You go to Kara, date yourself, figure it out, and, have some good, unique, and different sex for you, right?
Yes.
Chiara, where else can we find you online? Where can people contact you if they need a virtual session or an in-person session if they want to fly all the way to Italy or the Netherlands to see you?
Well, I mean, if they go on Instagram as intimacy, as spelled as Nisha was saying, and underscore, they can find me on Instagram. And then on Instagram, there is in my bio, there is the link to my website. And there is a link also there to book a one-on-one session straight away.
Okay.
So the website is www.intimacycoaching.com. And my Facebook page is Intimacy Coaching. But I mean, nowadays, this is the era of Instagram.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all social media.
So it's
So that's
basically
where the majority of your online activity is.
exactly. So intimacy underscore is where you can find me fast and easy, the
We'll,
easy way.
we'll be sure to tag you and to mention
Yeah.
you and provide all the details
Yes.
about
Yeah, we need to be
your
liberate
practice.
sexually.
Yeah, have a
I
liberation
agree.
party.
Thank you. This was so insightful, and I thought it was enjoyable, and I feel compelled to explore and to,
I'm so
I
happy.
do.
Me too.
So thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
We
It was
appreciate
Yeah.
it.
super nice to
I
be
feel
here.
so much more educated, and I feel like it's a little more, I feel more at ease with the
Yes,
direction
me
that I
too.
already was going in. So this just, if anything, this just reaffirmed for me, Chiara, that I'm on the right path, the right sexual journey.
So
She
good to
might
hear.
even get some honey in there. She might even get some honey in there.
Yeah.
All right, lovelies. Well, this was Messy with Chiara as our special guest, an intimacy somatic sex coach. Make sure you check out all our other episodes. And where can we find them, Mar?
On Messy
All of our
Truths
episodes, Spotify,
podcast.
Apple, Apple,
Everywhere.
all of your favorite streaming platforms. Anything, any of those platforms, you can find more about the Messy Truth podcast.
And we talk about sex a lot, so there's
do.
more of this to be found on there.
We
Oh,
do.
yeah.
All right.
Thanks for
All right,
listening,
guys.
folks.
Peace.
Peace.